So of course, one big thing when it comes to the mind, it's not just understanding the components as well, but and even trying to discern between who's a magician and who isn't, because the magician consciously controls their own magic, the non-magician does not. Usually has something else or someone else control it for them, for better or for worse. Is of course being able to control of one's own mind. Now, of course, even in mysticism, you're probably gonna learn how to do this anyway. It's still going to be important. I mean, this can be important even in any aspect of life, whether you're a mystic, occultist, or not. Whether you're on the spiritual, syncretic path, or higher path, whatever we want to call it, or you're just the average Joe Schmo, just waiting for the next football game. You still want to be in control of your own mind. And of course, with magic, it all begins in the mind. So if you really want to have a good practice and have good things manifest, of course, avoiding bad things manifesting, you have to be in control of it. So becoming a magician is it can be a bit of a double-edged sword, because one of the biggest things is making your subconscious more open to suggestion, right? But of course, while that can be a good thing if you're trying to put good things into him, can be a bad thing because then negative things can have an easier time getting in. So it's utterly important to be in control of that. And that's not to mention, as you train, as you do more practices and really get into it and really tune your mind to these things, it's going to be easier for things to manifest, which means, yeah, you can have your good thoughts, but if a bad thought gets in there and you don't take care of that right away, you could have something bad unintentionally happen, right? So one of the biggest things, is a very easy thing to learn, and something I would recommend everyone to do, whether you want to get fully into magic or not, is to learn how to banish negative thoughts. And it's really easy to do. Really, all you got to do is, when you get that negative thought, and this part of it, it's what I kind of do anyway. You focus on that thought, and you immediately just say that you reject, that you deny, and that you banish. So reject, deny, and banish. And make sure now there can be other words you potentially use, but those 3 words are very effective and very simple, of course, and they get the point across. And you will banish that thought. You'll tell your subconscious to reject it. Yeah, I know I said before where the subconscious does not have the ability to reject, but that's usually on its own. When you tell it to, then it can do that, but only by virtue of the conscious mind telling it to do so. And of course, yeah, there probably are many techniques as well. Like another one I've also heard was the one where people can visualize, like on a desktop computer, right? Most people will use it. You'll have like a recycling bin as well. You can visualize that thought as you say. You don't have to say it out loud. You can. It does make it more powerful. But even just thinking it should be good enough. When you say reject, deny, you banish, you can imagine those thoughts being put into like a trash bin and being thrown away. And of course, the next step after that is to make sure you stop thinking about it. If you think about it again, it's just going to come back and you kind of do the whole process again. It can be a little bit tricky at first, but of course, with anything, practice will make it easier. As well, you can also do the opposite. If you get a good thought, you can say, oh, I accept that thought. And, put it in like a folder or something else that you accept, which, oh, well and good.
So reject, deny, and
Banish.
Yeah.
Banish.
That's
and banish. Really important.
The reason why I would say use those words is because these are positive context words, meaning that these are actions that your subconscious can take. Because sometimes I remember way before, I remember hearing the phrase someone would use, oh, I'll just say, I don't accept that, which is arguably probably one of the worst things you could say. Reason being is because the subconscious, while it does not understand negative context words, actually, it doesn't really understand words at all. What the subconscious understands is imagery, feelings, symbolism, pretty much those things, right? Like that's the reason why we also do this grand drama. Like why we use candles, why we use these, put on robes, why we use sigils, whatever, because these things make an impression on the subconscious. Yeah, sure, words do have an effect, but not because of their definitions of the words, but because of the frequency and the vibration those words carry, that emotional charge those words carry. So when you use words like don't, can't, or shouldn't, those are negative context words. They don't have substance to them. So if you say something like, I don't accept that, to something you want to reject, well, the subconscious is going to hear, ignore the word don't, and just hear, I accept that. And you accidentally let something in without meaning to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in many ways, you can think of it as, imagine you're like your subconscious, like you and your subconscious are driving down the road, right? Like you're on the road and you're constantly moving. Like there's no brakes. The gas pedal's on permanent go. Um, and as you're driving, you up ahead, you can clearly see like a barrier, like a wall. Around you, you can see little gaps that you can drive through, but you have a barrier that's rapidly approaching. Of course, you want to avoid crashing. And you also, if you listen closely, you'll notice I said avoid. Avoid is also a positive context word. So instead of saying don't crash into that wall, subconscious is going to hear crash into that wall.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at.
So what you want to say instead, you want to avoid crashing that wall. It's like, oh, okay, so that's an action. You want to avoid, go around it. And magic isn't much in the same way. You want to avoid or going without crashing, right? Because that requires the subconscious to take a specific action to do something. Like another case in point is, say if you're in a court case for whatever reason, right? Maybe you stole someone's cookie and they caught you. But say you're in a court case and of course you want to be thinking, obviously you want to avoid losing. You don't want to say, I won't lose my court case.
Right.
Obviously that's going to backfire.
In there.
Well, yeah, the word lose.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. So instead you always want to focus on what you exactly want. So you want to avoid doing something. So, or you can just say you want to win that court case. I will win my court case. That's already the outcome that you want to happen. So you may as well say that, as opposed to saying something, in such a way that,
negative context.
Because if you say, I don't want to lose the court case, you just imprinted the idea and the whole reality in the picture of losing the court case.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, because that's going to be far more easier for you to visualize.
Yeah, because first your system's got to think, lose the court case, and then it thinks that and plays that out and programs that, and then it's trying to apply don't. So first it paints that whole picture, and then it's just trying to put don't in that, which is this weak little thing when you got this whole imagery and event playing out in your subconscious of losing the court case, and then you try to minus that out with just the word don't.
Yeah. And of course, yeah, like I said, the subconscious won't even recognize that. So it's no one, it's just doing what it's told to do. And lo and behold, you're going to have a bad outcome for yourself, which of course will probably suck more than likely.
Yeah.
So always try to focus on what you actually do want. And also as well, like being a bit of a wordsmith as well is also going to be an important thing to be as a magician as well. Because one thing you can end up doing, especially when you're creating sigils, you're going to be creating words of intent. And depending on how you want that to come about, how you word things is also important. Because right now we also get to I'm sure everyone's heard this saying, be careful what you wish for. And, especially in magic, because magic can do many miraculous things, beautiful, amazing things, even from healing the sick to bringing you immense fortune, to finding love, to doing whatever it is you desire. But in the same vein, and we're going to talk about polarities as well, it can also bring terrible things. It can do a lot of harm, and can really make things hellish, either for yourself or for others. So it's very important that we don't accidentally become a danger to either to ourselves or to other people. So, you're
accessing a power.
It's a big responsibility. It's taking responsibility even more so than we already have. Because we've taken responsibility for our health. We've taken responsibility, for our future path. And now we're going to be taking responsibility for on a bigger scale, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And considering how it's now, that power can definitely extend far beyond the limits, say, of our own room, or literally within our arm's reach. It's extremely important that we use this power wisely, because it is like a fire. A fire can do amazing things, but at the same time, you can actually burn down the whole village, or you can burn your own dinner with it too. And who likes eating charcoal? There might be someone out there that likes eating charcoal, but I know I don't. But even still, like, it's, yeah, definitely got to be careful, because
Mhm.
when I say dangerous, it can be very dangerous. And of course, that's not to put anyone off. That's not to instill fear or anything like that. I mean, sure, a healthy dose of fear is a good thing, because, like when crossing the road, there's going to be that tiny little instinct to look both ways so you don't get run over.
Mhm.
Magic, same thing too.
Yeah, and when you have this power, if you learn all this, what if you're in a bad mood one day and you want to cast a spell on you know, a loved one or somebody, and you end up really getting them too hard because
Oh, yeah.
then you have to live with that.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's definitely like, it's one thing, like at first, like before it's just like, oh yeah, you'll scream something, but now it's like, oh shit, I can, like, do I really want to take it that far? Like, I know I was angry. And sometimes, yeah, like sometimes there could be times where maybe it's, maybe it's justified, and perhaps it is. But of course, sometimes in everyday life, maybe someone looked at you funny, you didn't like the way they look at you, they called you a name, or did something. It's like something that's like, grand scheme of things, what was the harm done? Not much. And then you kind of, did what could be the equivalent of, say, stabbing them. Is like, well, now you stabbed them, you killed someone for something silly and menial.
I mean, obviously you can't take the stab away because that's like pretty, ending.
Yeah.
But if you, let's say you did cast a spell on somebody you loved in the moment of like irrationality because you're angry.
Yeah.
Can you like take it back?
um, I would say probably yes, if you're fast enough. If you catch yourself in the moment, like you'll say like, "Oh fuck you," like, sorry, shit, I take that back." Or the same thing. It goes back with the whole. Granted, you may not necessarily say this out loud, especially not to them, although those images might be more confused than anything else. In your mind, you can say you reject and you deny and you banish that, or take that back. At some point, you can even say counter with the opposite of whatever it is you try to throw at them.
Yeah.
But yeah, you make it up to them. You mend that mistake. Obviously, I would try to say do it as quickly as possible before something does happen.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, yeah, I think you absolutely can. Now, of course, it may depend on what it is you throw at them exactly. Yeah, so that's the whole thing on baneful magic too, where like, yeah, oftentimes, our first thought when someone wrongs us or does whatever, our first instinct is to get back at them. Like, and with magic, yes, very easy, and it can be very, very tempting to do so.
Mm-hmm.
I know a couple of times I had where it's just like someone kind of irritated me or kind of pissed me off, and the first thing is just like, I know how to fuck your day up, but it's like, no, not want to do that. No. It's like it's very easy to slip into that, but yeah, when baneful magic, and yeah, it's definitely a temptation to try to avoid as much as possible. Sometimes there might be situations where, especially in today's world, like you'll see things like, especially injustices done, like especially when it comes to human trafficking. Like, yeah, absolutely, and I'm definitely one of those people that wants to see justice done. Like there was a phrase I remember hearing. So like, the one way for evil to flourish is for good people to do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, yeah, letting it pass by doing nothing. It's like, how do you reconcile with, avoiding doing baneful magic? Because it's not even just for the sake of, hot moral high horse love and light. It's not because of that. It's just mechanically it's a bad idea. You need to throw morals out of the picture. It's just not a good idea, because what you send out is going to come back to you. So if you care about, let's go with the assumption that you care about yourself. Like, even if you don't care about morals, you don't care about doing any of that, that shit's going to still come back to you. And at that point, what did you really win? You went, yeah, you could say you went down swinging, but yeah, you threw a punch, but then in the process, you may have hit the other person, but then you end up punching yourself in the face. Now you look like an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like, it's just, generally speaking, it's not a good idea to be throwing out curses and hexes all the time. And there might be, and sure, perhaps there might be a time where you might feel you have to. In which case, you'll have to try to do your best to prepare accordingly, or even try to be clever with it too, where instead of trying to curse directly, you lay traps as well. Because, you can, especially when it comes to defense and protection, when it comes to magic, there are definitely some things you can definitely do that can involve, not only protecting yourself, but also sending whatever shit that was sent to you right back to whoever sends it to you. And it's essentially like kind of getting back at them, but without it being considered baneful, because you didn't send it right at them. They walked into that. It's on them, not you. Whereas cursing directly, well, that's a different story. But I will say though, for those who are definitely justice oriented, for those who really want to take up this fight against those who are doing wrong, especially to pedophiles, pedivores, human traffickers, all this nefarious shit that quite frankly should not be happening here, but unfortunately it is. There is a way to curse and hex, but without it being considered baneful, meaning that yes, if you want to deliver some kind of justice or contribute at least to it, there's a way to do it. Using divinity, as well as, but more specifically, like scripture, like every scripture, like from the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, the Bhagavad, say it carefully, the Bhagavad Gita. There we go. There's always a tongue twister if you don't say it regularly, but all these things are spell books, right? It's the gospel, it's a goat spell. Absolutely, it's a spell book, and it's a beautiful one, powerful one too. And especially more so if you grew up with these books, like if you had a Judeo-Christian upbringing, things like the Bible, especially the Book of Psalms, can be a very powerful spell book. Each of the passages, all 150 Psalms, all have a specific spell, all have a specific effect. Things can include, but of course not limited to, things from protection, love, wealth, reputation, and can also include, yes, cursing and hexing your enemies. And there's different degrees too. Some can be equivalent of a slap on the wrist, other than a punch to the gut, and another can be quite severe and, yes, can potentially kill. So it's one of those, really think about it, are they really deserving of this sort of thing? But here's the cool thing that I love about the Psalms, about scripture as well, when it comes to using these divine books, especially when it comes to cursing and hexing, it's very powerful, yes, and also the fact there's no downside to using it, because it's technically not you that's cursing them, it's the divine that's doing it. But by virtue of the divine doing it as well, it also comes with a built-in safety mechanism. So for anyone that thinks that, I'm going to use the Bible to curse this guy who looked at me funny, that's not going to work. Reason being is that when you use these in ritual, you're basically making a petition to the divine. Then the divine will take that petition, and of course, and because the divine's intelligent and omniscient, it can see the whole situation. So we'll take your request into consideration, and if it's justified and valid, it will go through with it. If it's not, it's not going to work. So obviously, unless you do something that is worthy of divine punishment, you don't have to worry about anyone else using these things directly against you.
Yeah, and this drawing awareness to just the idea that we can be cursed if we're not decent, good, loving people. It's going to only create more love in this world, knowing that we better be good, right?
What about
otherwise?
What about with these pedivores? Why can't you just put a spell on them of grace and goodness and deprogram their evil? Yeah,
that is a potential. That is a big possibility. The one thing though is also to keep in mind when it comes to casting magic and throwing spells out there, depending on what it is you do, obviously, you also got to remember that in this world that we're not the only magicians out there. It's like our magic that we're putting into play is not the only one out there, because while we may doing our own good things, consequently on the other side that they're doing their own things as well, which in turn can reinforce. And not only do they have well, in theory, at least, obviously this will vary from person to person, but they have already accumulated a lot of occult knowledge and using it on a daily basis. So they got their own stuff going, their own packs going, their own spells that are sealed in blood, which of course we can talk about blood magic. It's later down the line. So your magic's gonna be contesting with their magic, and it kind of can turn into a bit of a tug of war. But in theory, yeah, we could. We absolutely could try to override and exercise them of their demons.
Well, some
but
of them are just demons, period.
Yeah, some of them are just that, and yeah, cast them straight to hell. In which case, and even at the same time, and this is something that even for me, it's like if someone makes the choice to do wrong, to do bad, like they make the conscious choice, then at that point it's like, all right, look, you made the conscious choice, you should have known. It's like even if someone, like say, decides to get drunk, right? It's like, oh, I did something bad while I was drunk, but I was drunk. I can't be blamed. Well, it's like, sure, you were inebriated, but you still made the choice to get drunk, knowing that your thoughts would be interfered with. So, like at that point, like it's like, do we want to bring out our own justice as well, or do we want to forgive? I mean, that's always something that we're always going to have to kind of not necessarily struggle with, but decide on a case-by-case basis. And yeah, and forgiveness is definitely a big thing to talk about, because when we do have, like, carry like some kind of grudge towards someone, for something that may have done, whatever that could be, we carry that negative energy with us as well, and of course that can also interfere with our own capability to do magic. Especially when it comes to say for example, like wealth, for example, it's it can act as a block, because everything needs to flow, like much like water. Everything needs to flow, and if you have a blockage, then of course things are not going to flow as correctly, and you could either find it difficult to manifest things, or things just don't manifest at all, or worse, backfire more often than not. So being able to forgive someone is to truly let go of that. So when you do that, you let go of that negative energy, and that in turn will go back to them. Which is why, like, it's important, which can also contribute to the fact that if we accidentally do wrong, we want to make sure we are letting go that negative energy before someone decides to forgive us and have that negative energy hit us when we're least expecting it. So yeah, it's definitely not easy, right? For one reason or another, whether it's like personal pride, or it's because something as monstrous as pedophilia or pedivores. Like I mean, granted, I will admit, like, if there is to be forgiveness for them, I'm not sure if it'll come from me. I will admit that much. Whether or not that's the right thing to do, I don't know, but that shit needs to go. But nevertheless, like, in general, it's still a good thing to try to learn, even if as difficult as it is can be sometimes, depending on the context.